Yes, please. Okay, we are now live on YouTube. So welcome everybody to the Beverley annual parish meeting, the first such meeting to be held by this current council in this term. And welcome to the members of the public present, those who are joining us for the Zoom call, and also that could be watching us by the live stream on YouTube. If everybody could go on to mute, please, and then when you are called to speak, unmute appropriately and then go back onto mute afterwards. So I'll just do a brief introduction. I'm sure everybody is aware, but it's been quite a tumultuous year for Beverley and for the wider world outside of our town. It's been a little bit crazy, I think, to say the least. In my time as mayor, it's been quite quiet in comparison to other mayors' terms of office. This is probably, I think, something like the 5th engagement or something ridiculous like that I've done in this full year. So it's a little bit quiet, but we've managed to achieve quite a lot of things in this year. We had some great floral displays across the town last year. They looked absolutely fantastic, which is a marvellous achievement given everything that's been going on in the year. The Christmas lights looked spectacular, looked fantastic as well. We've put in some extra investment into CCTV across the town as well. So the council has achieved an awful lot of things, and it hopefully will go on to achieve even more when we're out of lockdown, and we're able to start doing events again, safely, of course, and we can start to provide more things for the town going forward. Myself, I've raised some money miraculously for my 2 charities, the Lollipop Group and Hull Royal Infirmary Ward 4. I've raised £600 in the pot, and that was from a cabaret evening that I did in February. In March, and that was it was a really funny evening, lots of entertainment, and also raised a few eyebrows, I think is is fair to say, to some of the guests present. I'm looking forward to the year ahead. I think it's a really positive year ahead for Beverley, and some of the things that we've got planned. Hopefully, I don't think, well, it definitely won't be this year, but next year we'll be able to have our first Pride in the town, and have a really spectacular day celebrating Pride and everything that goes with it, and also start to do the events that we really wanted to do this year and last year in the year ahead. So obviously, residents of Beverley parishes who wish to speak at this meeting will need to give their name and postcode, if you could as well, please, prior to speaking. You'll be asked to provide that just to verify that you are in fact on the electoral register for Beverley, because this meeting is quite unique, and it does raise the issue of the parish of Beverley being the parish of Beverley and the historical boundaries it lies within, and people who think they may live in Beverley or associate themselves with living in Beverley actually don't. And residents of Millscroft and Woodmansea will have the opportunity to attend parish meetings arranged by the respective parish councils for their area. So this is just specifically for residents in Beverley. Right, so we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 5th of March, 2019. Can I have, I'll propose it from the chair. Can I have a seconder for those, please? Ian Gow. And all those in favour, please show. Yeah, well, everybody can vote on that. So I've got is anybody against? So that's carried. Everybody else is abstaining.
I wasn't there. I don't think I was
yeah,
there.
That's fine. That's fine. So, item 3, any matters of interest or concern relating to Beverley raised by residents of Minster North and South and St Mary's East and West. I'll just go to the Deputy Town Clerk.
Yeah, I have a couple that have been submitted this week and today by email. One is from Mr. Cox. Now, I'll wait because he might be able to join the meeting, but if by the end of the meeting he hasn't been able to join, I'll raise these. The other one is from a lady who can't make the meeting, who has just made a request who said it's super to see all the floral displays around our super town, but could you analyse where we could plant more trees? There are small pockets of land that would benefit from trees. For example, some cherry trees in Cherry Tree Lane or an oak tree around the back of the library. It would be a marvellous thing to do. Do please consider this idea. So with that one, we can put that on to a planning, property and services meeting to look at how that can be figured. I know several councillors are currently looking at the idea of more trees in Beverley, so we can put that on a PPS agenda, and I've emailed the lady thanking her for her comments, and I'll let her know that's what we're going to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Brilliant way forward there. Does anybody who has joined the meeting have anything to raise?
Yes, please.
Okay, Jackie Heffer, you need to, I don't know if you was here when I mentioned it, but you need to give your name and your postcode, please, so we can verify that you're on the electoral roll.
Jackie Heffer, HU170RX. And yes, I am on the electoral roll.
That's fine.
Yeah, I can confirm that, Mr. Chair.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Okay, yeah, Jackie, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, it's just a question. Where you've done the audit and you've done expenses as well, Mr. Peter Estelle has done a great job with all the flower arranging, but the travel arrangement is I'm a bit queried about, because we're supposed to have been in lockdown, and he spent nearly £500 in travel, and I just want to know, why didn't you use the town council's van?
Okay, well, I'm sure that's something that we can get back to you about. Do you have anything to say about that, Deputy Town Clerk? I mean, it's, I think that it's something that probably get back to Mrs. Heffer about.
Yeah, we can place it on the planning, property and services agenda because it was connected to work relating to that committee with flowers, etc. During lockdown, elements of voluntary work were still allowed to take place within secure arrangements, which is what I think one of the reasons why the car was taken rather than the van, so as not to spread potential. But we'll take that to PPS, we'll raise it, and then if there's a requirement because of the financial aspect, it can then also be forwarded to policy and finance.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying as well that actually a lot of these things were done whilst the van, whilst we had a handyman, but was on only very, very limited hours, and it is the duty of councillors to volunteer in the community, as I'm sure people are aware and would expect of their councillors to volunteer, to do tasks and to fill in where required. And as chair of Planning, Property and Services, and with very detailed knowledge of everything that was going on, I think Councillor Astel volunteered, obviously, and took the trips. It was just unfortunate that the trips that were taken were quite lengthy trips out in the sticks somewhere, Matt, wasn't it? Was it something beginning with a B?
Yes.
Yeah, so out in the sticks. So that's just what it is, I'm afraid. And the expenses claimed were justified for that.
If I could also add, Mr. Chair, I think some of the travel I think we've all got so brain melded regarding what we're allowed to do at different times of the year. Some of the work took place after the first lockdown, before what's called the second lockdown. And then, as you said, some of the work was actually to support the handyman where 2 people were needed. So therefore 2 vehicles were required to fulfil the regulations. But as I say, we can put it on PPS, that's Policy, Planning and Services Committee. And then if required, regarding the financial aspect, it can be then forwarded to Policy and Finance.
Okay, anything else? Anybody?
No, just thank you. And I think he does a lovely job. I just wanted to know about the van, that's all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jackie.
Bye.
Anybody else? Okay, Margaret Pinder.
Hello, yes, I'm asking questions as a resident. It's HU178JU, Albert Terrace, formerly known as Slutwell Lane. Really?
I can, of course, confirm that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Tom, I had a question about, because this last year, when you've been mayor, it's been really difficult because we've had lockdown. You haven't been able to do very much. And I've got kind of 2 questions. One is, are you planning to try and do a Pride this summer? Because that was going to be one of your big events last year that couldn't happen. So that's one question. The other question is, lots of other councils in the area have extended the terms for their mayors because of the lockdown. And I just wondered if that was something you were considering. I'm not asking in a difficult way at all. It's quite a genuine question, because I just feel you haven't had much of a crack of the whip, actually.
Thank you. For the first question, I can confirm that there are no plans being drawn up for Pride this year currently. With the lockdown, it's made, well, with the situation, I think it's made planning events, as everybody knows, very, very difficult. The council took the decision at the last full council to cancel the food festival, which would have taken place after the Pride event. And Pride events are as such of the type of event is as such that it's a social occasion, and it is a get together, and it would be very difficult to organise an event in which you would have to require people to stay apart and to not mingle and not hug each other and not, sing along, dance along, whatever. It would have been really difficult. So I think that the best thing for us to do, and I think it's yet to be officially decided by council, but looking at Matt, that probably would be good to go on to the next agenda. I think it slipped the net ever so slightly. Is to postpone it again to next year. Fingers crossed, we will be in a much better position, and we will be able to hold an event such as that. And that would be quite good, really, to be able to do that. Of course, I am really disappointed that we wasn't able to have it last year. It was going to be such a good time, and for me personally, it's something that I really wanted to spearhead and to champion that for the town. But yes, so we'll definitely be looking at for next year. In terms of my term, that's something for the council to decide. I know that the deputy mayor, Councillor Johnson, is really looking forward to having her time as mayor. I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. and yes, things might improve this year, but who knows? I'm hoping that for her sake they will do. I want her to have as full a year as possible as mayor, because I'm sure that she would make a fantastic mayor, and would do the town proud. So I appreciate the sentiment there, and I do thank you for your words, but yeah, I don't have any plans to extend my time this year.
Yes, I'm sorry about the crowd. I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, there are lots of skimpy outfits, and you would need sort of all body sanitizer, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
In terms of mayor making, it is an election and it hasn't been held yet.
True. It is true.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Okay, anybody else have anything to raise? I know that Martin, you do. So you are currently muted, though, Martin. I'm going to have to do the.
Okay. Am I live now?
You are live. We can hear you crystal clear. If you missed the part where I said that you just need to state your name and your postcode, please, just so we can verify that you're on the electoral roll within Beverley.
I am definitely that. Martin Cox, HU17 0AX.
I can confirm that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Right then, Martin, over to you.
I feel there have been issues with the annual accounts now for 2 years in a row, leading to both an investigation that's pending from the external auditor and a list of recommendations by the new internal auditor in her interim report that was published at the last full council meeting. What are the councillors doing to ensure that the financial workings of the council are being put onto a firmer footing?
Okay, thank you for that.
That was a little lengthy. Do you want to repeat that, or do you feel you've got the gist?
No, that's fine. I've got the gist. I think that it would be good for us we can provide you with a full answer to your question in writing.
Thank you.
In the interim, I can just say that obviously this new council, it's a very, very new council, even though it's been 2 years. The last year has been very difficult to be able to function properly. But that being said, we knew that there were issues with the accounts, with the audits that we've had, and we have taken steps to mitigate these. We had another audit looking at very specific areas that we wanted to look at last year, who reported back last May, I think it was, in regards to that. The new internal auditor, who is fantastic, and she's done a really, really good job at looking at sort of a full spectrum audit of the accounts and everything across the board, has highlighted several areas that are falling of current regulations. None of it is really, really, really eye-wateringly concerning, but as a whole, the document doesn't read particularly well and is a concern when you look at it as a whole document. But what we have done is we've got a 32-point plan that's now been enacted by full council to alleviate all of the points that have been made by the internal auditor, and the plan spans all quarters of this financial year to enable efficient working, so that everything can be done in a timely manner and in the correct way, and that the correct processes can be put in place so that when we have an audit next year for this financial year, it should read an awful lot better. So to answer your question, the management of the finances are in place, and we've got a clear plan in place to correct some of the issues that have been raised in the audits. It's a very concise plan, very clear, and is available to view. It was raised at the last full council meeting. It's all in the supporting papers for that, and you can see that on there. But we'll provide a full, more detailed response in writing. That's probably the most appropriate thing to do. Claire Wildey.
Sorry, could I just add to that, Mr. Mayor? If that's
Sorry,
all right?
yes, yeah, Deputy
Yeah,
Clerk,
the audit documents, there's an audit page on the website as well, where the audit recommendations have been uploaded, as has the action plan. That action plan will be regularly updated on the website with the different committees responsible for different elements of it. And that will be a standing item on the agenda for each of those committees' meetings, see where progress has been made. After the 32 recommendations, between the internal auditor coming in and last week, officers had already managed to either resolve or partly resolve about 15 of them, because what the auditor was looking at was stuff from the beginning of this financial year to coming in towards the end of the financial year. Usually an internal auditor would come in September time, and there'd be 5 or 6 months to resolve any recommendations by the final audit. But for various other reasons, that wasn't able to take place. So there's only going to be 5 or 6 weeks between the interim and the final audit. So quite a lot of progress has been made, but the larger, more solid pieces that need to be worked on, we worked on over the coming year, including, as the Mayor said, in quarters. But as was agreed at a meeting last week, when we select our committees next week at the annual council meeting, 2 temporary working groups have been set up to look at 2 very specific aspects of it. They'll be detailed on the agenda for that meeting when that's uploaded, when I upload that after this meeting. So the council is taking all the facts into consideration, and hopefully through a logical way forward, addressing each matter as prudently as possible, with support from the internal auditor.
Thanks, Matt. And I think it should be worth saying as well is that we need to brace ourselves for another audit that's very similar to this one in how it reads, because the audit for the year end is for last financial year. And when we received this audit, it was in the new financial year. So we can't do anything about that. That's coming in about a few weeks' time. But what I said before was that next year, when the audit is done on this financial year, residents should see vast improvements in the audit. To be fair, I think you've got a very, very detailed answer there, Martin. So I'm not sure what more a written response would actually provide, to be fair. I don't think there is anything else that needs to be added to that.
I feel I still would like a written response, but I've taken on board your intentions to try and resolve as many of those outstanding issues that have been highlighted as possible. Obviously, there's a little bit of history there that goes back to a previous audit where recommendations weren't necessarily followed through, and the council were happy to, try to sign those accounts off. I'm assuming that this latest list of recommendations that I may not have actually, I've only read through very quickly when I saw this coming.
Did you mention you mentioned about the external auditor as well, didn't you? I should have mentioned about that as well, and just clarified that it's not true that the external auditor has refused to sign off last year's AGAR. What's happened is that because of lockdown, Little Johns and other external auditors across the country have received a large volume of objections to audits, and that's a sectoral thing. That there has been a lot of members of the public that have objected to the AGARs that town and parish councils across the country have done. We have received a response from Little John's because last week the deputy clerk was quite was wanting an update on the status of it because we hadn't heard anything back from them, and they had provided the response that because there's been a lot of residents across the country that have objected, there is a huge backlog in them actually approving those AGAR, investigating the objections. They haven't even opened the case into the objections for Beverley Town Council yet. So it's going to be quite a time until we get that signed off.
Do you feel that all the recommendations from the interim audit that's been published recently will actually put to bed some of those issues that people have raised with the external auditor, and that will be all those issues will be completely resolved if the current list of recommendations is followed through?
Yeah, the action plan that we've got is very concise, very comprehensive, and it actions all of the recommendations that the internal auditor has suggested to do. Also, something to bear in mind as well is, however, is that financial regulations change every year. That's why you have audits done, so that you know that you're keeping up to date with financial regulations. They're not just one document for several years, they change every single year from JPAG. So we continue to improve and we continue to learn about the new processes and techniques that are sent down, and that's something that we're also enacting as continuous development.
Just one final addition, Mr. Mayor. As with any audit, it's an ongoing process of development and checks and balances, and therefore each year a council assesses that year based on their AGAR on what that's for anyone's listening. That's the annual return. Bases that on what they feel is the case at the time. This year, for example, because, as I said earlier, there's only been the 5 weeks, opposed to 5-6 months to resolve some issues. Some responses in our AGAR may be no. These documents are very arbitrary with yes or no, and they're not like an Ofsted where you have an outstanding or notice to improve, etc. So all because an answer is no, it doesn't mean a fail for that section. It means there is development work still to be done. So even if there are no's this year, it's over the full year that we'll be working through that document of resolutions. So it will be a year-long process to get through it all, but we will do our hardest to achieve that.
Thank you. Right. Was there any other points, Martin, or is that everything?
I think one of my biggest concerns was probably the amount of money what was held in reserves that all seem to be in one place. I don't think we're going to have the collapse of the equivalent of Northern Rock, but you just never know, do you? And it was one of the things I was most worried about, having been a councillor previously. I was always taught in my training that you should never have that much money sitting in one place in case something went wrong. And I just wonder whether that in particular had been dealt with. And what the council now plans to do with that huge sum of money. Are they still looking for a permanent base without having to rent a building in Beverley?
Okay, I think that's something that the deputy clerk can provide a written response on. We can
provide a written response on that, because for over the year, various money has been ring fenced in this year's budget, has been allocated to specific items. The town council is on record as investing the money with other bodies. When we looked at that, it was very difficult to find banks under different banking licenses that would provide the sort of account suitable. So we're investigating with the I can't remember
CCLA.
CCLA, which specialises in these sort of investments, and also X amount is with the Beverley Building Society now, rather than just in the same bank account. So it's something we're gradually working on. One of the issues we faced last year, when we tried to change anything like this, the banks didn't class it as essential business during lockdown. So some of the things that we tried to do, we've had to hold off on. So again, it's very much something that the council's looking at, and hopefully we'll be able to in the next few months. I appreciate what Mr. Cox is saying, and I can provide a bit more detail in writing.
It sounds like the council is definitely moving forward on this one and is trying to look in great detail at the recommendations and to action as many of them as possible. I was just a bit concerned when I saw the council had passed a motion to say that all was well with their accounts and the finances, when clearly there seem to be so many recommendations that seem to follow that motion. But it sounds like the council is getting more on it, and hopefully is getting decent advice.
Okay, Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there are any plans to memorialise those lost in Beverley from COVID.
Well, there isn't at the minute, but I'm sure that that's something that you could potentially raise at a future full council meeting as a councillor.
Right. Okay.
If council wishes, that council wishes, because it's in the council meeting itself, but when we discuss it at council, that can go on a future council meeting. It might not be the next one or the one after that, because there's quite a lot of business, but it is something that we can put in the council meeting.
Can you put it on the agenda then?
It can go on the agenda, probably not the next one because of the amount of business that's on it, but with the next 2 or 3 meetings, we're going to try to plan the work out so we don't get overloaded in each meeting. I'll definitely put it on the list to go on one of those meetings.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Margaret.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have actually raised this in full council before. I mean, it hasn't been an official agenda item, so I have brought it before council before, and I would, if it would go on as an agenda item, I would appreciate it, because I think it is definitely something as a council that just speaking now as a councillor, that we could be looking at. Thank you.
Definitely. I can't remember it coming to council before, but might not have been listening.
It wasn't a formal agenda item, but it came up in some of the discussions.
You must have got lost.
In fairness, it was not an agenda item.
Right. Okay.
It just came up it has been mentioned before, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it has come on our radar before. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything else to raise? Because we can also forward questions. Yeah, we can also forward questions on to other responsible bodies in Beverley. It doesn't all have to be about the town council, of course. If anybody wants anything to do with crime or anything to do with East Riding of Yorkshire Council or anything to do with, twinning or anything else, it could, anything to do with it. It's not just a town council meeting. It could be anything to do with Beverley that anybody wants to raise. Was you going to say something, Martin?
I apologise. I'll arrive late to the meeting. I was interviewing new staff at school, and it took a while to get home from Goole. Okay. I just promised a friend of mine I would check whether her question, which I think she sent in writing, Lynn Peterson wrote a
about
question
trees.
Yes. Have I missed it?
Yes, you have. Yeah, that was the first one raised.
I drove as fast as I dared. Right, okay.
And the outcome of that was it's going on to a PPS meeting. So I'm sure if you are so inclined, you could tune into that and watch that live streamed on YouTube to see us planting some more trees around Beverley. Yeah. I'm sure that would make riveting viewing.
Just to confirm with that as well, as I said at the start of the meeting, I read out the email and I explained I've already emailed Lynn back. And I know councils have been talking about the idea of this sort of thing anyway, so I've linked her up with some councils as well.
Absolutely fantastic. Ian
Gauss, 71 SY Mole Lane, HU17 0LY. Would it be useful to mention the Hanseatic League, Mr. Mayor?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, Ian.
No, for Mr. Mayor to mention that.
Right. So yes,
that
was something
successful.
I missed in my report. I missed that in my report. We are now members of the fabled Hanseatic League, which is a group of, I think it's 196 towns and cities across the world, in which the Hansa, which were Hansa towns back in the day, which was a trading route, and trade was passed between them. And those towns, I don't think it exists anymore. Well, it probably does, but well, we're talking medieval stuff anyway. The trade went between them, and so now there's a league of former Hanseatic towns, and Beverley is now among them. And there's only, I think, 5 in the UK now. Can I name them? I know Hull's one of them. Kings Lynn. Or is it 4? Beverley, Hull, Kings Lynn, and there's another one, but it's mistake. Is it Boston?
One of those down there, anyway.
Yes, I think it's something like that. And so there isn't many in the UK.
And Aberdeen and Edinburgh.
Yes, that's it. Thank you, David. And actually, Hull has been a member for some time, for a few years now. But actually, Beverley has more right to be a Hanseatic town than Hull, because
Hull
Beverley
was a staple, wasn't it? Hull was only a distribution depot.
Oh, well, here we go, Claire. Well, why don't you tell everybody about it? You're an expert.
Because Beverley was far more important than Hull in the medieval period.
Yes, it was. It
As
was.
we all should know.
Beverley was larger than Hull at one point.
Yeah, it was more important than York as well at one point. Yeah,
absolutely. And I would go even as far as to say that the mayor actually is more important than the Lord Mayor of Hull, but it's just so happens that they've got another title added to their name, which is rather annoying. But anyway.
Well, going on that logic then, Tom, you should be doing longer than a year. You should be doing at least 18 months, because Lynn Petrini is doing 18 months in Hull.
Admiral of Beverley Beck, we should put that on agenda.
Absolutely. I will stand on the barge with at the front of it, and I will hold the mace aloft.
I think it's appropriate, given that we are members of the Hanseatic League, and it needs a little bit more publicity when things improve.
Absolutely. It's really good. And we're officially, I think there's going to be something in Riga this year, maybe, who knows. And that's where we'll get the official certificate and documentation regarding the stuff. So we've got a couple of hands up now. Jim Whitfield, you're muted, Jim. You are on mute.
Just a point about people's names and postcodes, please, to make sure they live in Parish.
Absolutely. So just your postcode, please, Jim. You're still muted. See if Matt can sort it for you. You were muted, Matt.
You need to unmute yourself.
I have the ability to mute, but not unmute.
Oh, right. You'll have to see if you can work it out yourself, James.
Right.
There we go. Yeah, we're on. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Just your postcode, if you may, please.
Mayor, I'm a resident in Woodmansey Parish, but I don't wish to ask a question. You mentioned twinning just now.
I'm sorry, Jim. You can't speak. You can't speak.
Oh, bless.
Sorry about that, Jim.
Okay.
Martin?
Are you sure there's nobody else waiting in the queue above me?
Okay, can you hear me now?
You sure?
Yeah, Jim, we can hear you, but because you're a resident of Woodmansey, you can't speak at this meeting.
Well, you mentioned twinning, and I just wanted to report on the current status of the twinning arrangement.
I know. I'm sorry, Jim. You can't.
That's okay. It wasn't a question, but I understand the protocol.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry.
Don't apologise.
Mr. Chair, I'll give Mr. Whitfield a bell next week. Have a chat with him about it.
Okay.
We could maybe have a report at a council meeting or something, Jim. It would be good to hear about all of the twinning stuff. But unfortunately just can't hear it tonight. So
that's not a problem.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Jim. I've got Anne Willis. Oh no, you're not a resident, Anne. You can't speak. I know that for a fact.
But I can't speak as a councillor.
You can't. No. You're not. It's not about. Nobody's a councillor apart from me.
It's about the Hanseatic League. I'll put it on to
Sorry.
Don't worry.
Sorry.
I think Martin Cox has got his hand up.
Yes.
Speak, and it may be connected with the twinning. I'm guessing.
Yes, I'm guessing so too. So I'll come to Martin.
Bad guess. Right, okay. I can rattle on about that as well, but people might think I'm taking up too much of your busy time. No, I'm back on with trees again. There was a lot of consternation in both the civic society and on some of the local social media when the pasture masters seemed to be felling some rather old trees, and no one could see any evidence of whether they were replacing them. When someone contacted them, they said that, you know, one or two limbs of the tree, you know, needed dealing with. But the answers seemed to be chop the whole tree down because it was a darn sight easier than, no, this is my interpretation anyway. I just get the impression that they seem to be a law unto themselves, or that they are definitely their own masters as pasture masters, without any reference to town council or East Riding Council. I wrote to East Riding and was told that, you know, what the pasture masters does is their own business, and they have no oversight of that. I'm just wondering what sort of liaison there is between either of the councils and the pasture masters, because the people of Beverley see that as common land that is nurtured and overseen by the pasture masters. But I think they would imagine there was a greater sense of cooperation and planning and thought and exchange of ideas between the councils and the pasture masters. And I just wonder what sort of legal basis there is for how these type of decisions and the management of that land, what is the legal basis for that? I realise that you can't answer that tonight, Tom, because you're not a legal expert on land management, but I would quite like that researched and actually a response to that, because I could name at least 8 people who seem to have got very het up about it. And I did say that I would try and raise it with the council. I've written and informed the clerk previously about what I thought was the legal arrangement. But I would like some sort of fuller cooperation and regular, even if it's only an annual report that goes backwards and forwards and explains what they've done and their accounts and so on. That may happen already, but I don't ever remember that. I know, and I remember sitting through many a council meeting with great excitement where someone discussed a tree that might be overhanging their garden, and whether it could be lopped off or not. And it seems that this group of people they seem to have carte blanche, you know, to manage the land in any way they see fit. And I'm not quite, from my viewpoint, that's not quite good enough.
Okay, I think that I see your hands up, Matt, but I think if we can research that, speak to whoever at East Riding at Pasture Masters, response written up, and we can reply to Mr. Cox's question on.
If that reply can also be brought up at council, I don't know which
yes,
would be the relevant
absolutely. No doubt it will.
It was discussed last week at the Planning, Property and Services Committee, because councillors had received communication from members of the public who would understandably assume that the town council was involved with it. The resolution from that meeting was to try and foster a stronger link between the town council and the pasture masters to discuss these sort of things. A group of 4 or 5 councillors are going to liaise with the pasture masters to have an informal chat to look at how something can go forward in the future so there can be better communications.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect. Claire Wildy, got your hand raised virtually.
We were supposed to be talking about the Hanseatic League. We were supposed to be going on a trip to Riga, which I was really looking forward to, but of course it got cancelled and it's now going to be virtual online. But instead of that, there's going to be a trip to King's Lynn, which I'm really looking forward to, because obviously it's really old and it was heavily involved in the Hanseatic League. And I've offered to drive everybody there if we do go, and we do get a minibus. I'm just letting you know in case anybody else wants to come along.
Fantastic. Thanks, Claire. Does anybody else have anything to raise that is related to Beverley? Matt.
If I could, as a resident, Matthew Snowden, HU179FB, just to comment that it has been, as the Mayor touched at the start, it has been such a difficult year. There's been a lot of lost people, businesses have suffered. It's been so difficult for mental health and all of the reasons. But the positive that's come out of this town, whether it be the work of the town council or its riding, really stepped up to the plate, in my personal opinion, regarding coordinating things across the county, the individual groups that were set up, just individual neighbours looking after neighbours. That community of Beverley became incredibly strong in a really difficult time. I know you've mentioned it, Mr. Mayor, in previous speeches. I know other people have mentioned it, but I just felt that this means, it ought to be said that the community in Beverley has been so strong as a whole from all different aspects, and hopefully that strength of unity will continue in the future and just do nothing but benefit the town more, especially coming out of such sadness and such difficult times. There has been that glow of positivity. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I could not put it better. Matt, you've summed everything up really there. As you say, I've said it before. I think that, and I think it is only fitting that we do have some kind of memorial in this town, wherever that may be, and whatever form it should take, to remember who we've lost along the way, but also to remember the time and the community spirit and the actions that people have taken across the town to step up and to come together in a time of need. And I think it's really, really important that we do that. So definitely will be something that we need to look at. But thanks, Matt, for that. Anything else from anybody? Okay, right. Time's up. I'm closing the meeting now then at 18:52. Thank you very much for all of your attendance and for coming. It's been a really insightful meeting, and I think we've all got something to take away from it, and we've got some stuff to research about trees, and some other things that we'll need to come back on. And of course, we need to get Jim at a future appropriate meeting to talk about all of the work going on with twinning. But the meeting closed at 18:52. So thank you all for coming, and see you all next year.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for contributing.
Thanks all.
We're still live, I think.
We shouldn't be.